And joining us now to discuss all of this is Dr. Nir Boms, Research Fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University. Thank you, Neil, for joining.
Good to be here.
So, Neil, we see the Houthis targeting Tel Aviv and central Israel again. I myself, along with my children and all of the other residents of central Israel, have had to run for shelter at 3 or 4 a.m. most nights this past week. I think the Israeli public is feeling that they've had enough. What could and should be done about this threat, in your opinion?
Well, I think that we're doing a lot of what we should be doing. And I think that with time, and it took perhaps more time than we wanted and more time than we thought, but we've seen the arenas of the proxies of Iran in Lebanon, in Syria begin to crumble. And we've seen more significant activity also on the Yemenite front. And it's important that we're not going to do it on our own. It's important that the Americans, the Brits, and others will work with us. This is perhaps fortunately an interest not just of ours, so there is more interest and willing to act in tandem, and we need to stop them. I don't think that diplomacy will work here.
So how do you foresee Israel will handle the Houthis? What steps can be taken?
Well, what needs to be taken is to put as much pressure as possible. And some of this pressure is in the form of targeted military strikes on the relevant infrastructures. Again, this is a target that's 2,000 kilometers away from us. It's not something that can be done every day or every week, as was the case in Syria and Lebanon. But it's a campaign that needs to find a conclusion. It's a campaign that needs to get the help of other stakeholders that hopefully will help bring Yemen to a different place. Remember that the Houthis have taken Sana'a in another military coup and have taken over a land that is one of the poorest countries on earth. There is so little there aside from the Houthi infrastructure, so it's not a matter of just bombing the civilian infrastructures. There's not a lot there. Everything is invested rather than in the well-being of the population. It's invested in the well-being of the militia that is funded by Iran. We need to distance that militia. We need to show the people in Yemen as well that that's not the way. And eventually help push for a different reality in Yemen, and certainly to stop the Houthis and to eliminate the relevant infrastructure and military infrastructure that enables them to continue this work. And remember, this is not the Houthis on their own. This is one of the last fronts that remains in Iranian hands. And this is why they're getting all the equipment and all the latest technology. This is not their doing, it's Iran.
So what is it that Israel can target in Yemen? You've explained how complex this is, and Israel has announced targeting Houthi leaders directly. How likely is this to change things around?
We've seen this with Hezbollah, we've seen this with Hamas. Eventually, every structure has leadership and has management structure. And if we're able to take some of the leadership structure, we are weakening the ability to respond. That had worked in Gaza, that had worked in Lebanon, that eventually had worked in Syria when we have taken the Iranian-based infrastructures and left the field more free for al-Jolani to eventually take over. In Yemen, it could be that more of that needs to happen. Of course, it's more difficult to do this, but perhaps speaking about some of this and scaring and letting the leadership understand that they're at risk will also do at least a part of this work. Eventually, it's not a team that can be easily convinced by using diplomatic pressure to stop what they're doing. They're ideological, they're dedicated, and they are operated by a country that's not yet willing to give up. Perhaps additional pressure on Iran can do the work, and perhaps the new administration in the United States will be able to do some things that were not done before.
And Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz compared this strategy of targeting the leadership to actions taken against Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar or Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah. You believe this will be an effective approach?
If leadership team, in addition to the relevant infrastructure, is going to be weakened, naturally it's going to affect the effectiveness of any military campaign. Just like in the case of Hezbollah, you have leaders who are responsible for this targeted operation. There are not so many of them, so every leader has a significant command responsibility. In the case of Hezbollah, we've seen many of these leaders who have been there not just for 5 or 6 years, but for 10, 15, and 20 years. They are not irreplaceable, but it's more difficult to replace them. And therefore taking the command structure certainly weakens the movement. This movement needs to be weakened. This movement needs to be eliminated. Of course, we need to find also alternatives for the future. But this is a challenge that is much broader than the one that Israel can take.
And just last, how are international players likely to respond to this latest escalation? Can we expect assistance from global or even regional allies?
I think we have seen some assistance already, and I think we need to remember that the regional allies have been involved in the war in Yemen, but they have taken a few steps back, realizing that they're not able to do it alone. I think here we need to hope, not just rely, but we need to hope that American leadership will be more assertive, and what we've seen lately is encouraging. The allies in the region are suffering deeply from the economic ramifications of what is happening in Bab el-Mandeb. They very much would like to see this problem sorted. They're a part of a regional coalition, and they can do more. And with the right leadership, I think they will.
Dr. Nir Boms, thank you very much.
Good to be here.